Every baker knows you only need a spoonful of starter to change a whole kitchen. You keep it in a jar on the counter, you feed it a little flour and water each day, and that one small living thing grows and grows until it's in the bread, the biscuits, the air, everything you make. A lie works the exact same way. You only need a spoonful. You feed it a little every day, in passing, with a smile, and after a few years, it isn't a lie anymore. It's just the flavor of the whole house. It's who everyone thinks you are. My sister-in-law fed a lie about me for 13 years, a teaspoon at a time, until my own husband's family tasted it in everything I did. And I am going to tell you how it finally came back out into the light, because I think some of you have a jar like that sitting on somebody's counter right now, growing in the dark with your name on it. My name is Maggie. I'm 35, and I own a small bakery on the main street of a town up in the Lakes Country of New Hampshire. The kind of town where the leaf peepers clog the road for 6 weeks every fall, and then it goes quiet and white and ours again. I get up at 4 to feed the starter and fire the ovens, and by the time the town's awake, there's bread in the window, and the whole block smells like something good is about to happen. I built that place with my own 2 hands and a small business loan and more early mornings than I can count. I married a good man named Ben 13 years ago, and for almost all of those 13 years, I have been, in the eyes of his family, the cold one, the difficult one, the one who changed Ben and keeps him from his people. None of it was true. All of it stuck. Let me tell you how a thing like that happens to a person, because it doesn't happen all at once. It happens a spoonful at a time. Before I go on, let me ask you something, and you can leave it in the comments while it's sitting fresh. Have you ever had someone decide who you were, quietly, behind your back, and tell it so warmly and so often that people who'd known you for years started believing it over their own eyes? If you have, then pull up a stool. This one's for you. I need you to understand how much I wanted that family, because that's what made the whole thing hurt the way it did. I grew up an only child of 2 people who loved me but kept to themselves. A quiet house, holidays for 3. So when I met Ben, and he came with a big, loud family, parents and a sister and a little brother and cousins and a lake house and Sunday dinners that ran till dark, I fell in love with all of it at once. I wanted in so badly. I learned everybody's coffee order. I brought the good dessert to every gathering, made from scratch, because feeding people is the only love language I've ever really trusted. I wanted Ben's mother, Donna, to think of me as another daughter. I wanted his sister, Whitney, to be the sister I never had. And at first, Whitney was warm to my face. That's the part people who haven't lived it don't understand. She was never once cruel where you could point at it. Whitney is charming. Whitney is the woman who remembers your birthday and brings the perfect little gift and tells a story at dinner that has the whole table laughing. Everybody loves Whitney. That is precisely what makes her so good at what she does, because a woman everybody loves can say one soft sentence about you in the right ear, and it lands like gospel. I'll tell you how much I trusted her at the start, because it makes the rest land right. When I was scraping together the money to open the bakery, terrified, sure it would fail, Whitney was the one who sat with me at her kitchen table and helped me name it and told me I could do it. And I cried with gratitude and thought, this is what having a sister is. And the year her own marriage fell apart, I closed the shop for 2 days and brought her soup and sat on her bathroom floor while she cried. And I'd have done it 100 more times. I loved her. I want that on the record. Whatever she became to me, I started out loving her with my whole open chest. And that's part of why it took me so many years to let myself see. You don't go looking for the knife in the hand of someone you'd have bled for. Here is the thing about Whitney that took me years to understand, and I'll say it without making her a cartoon, because she isn't one. She's a frightened person, and that matters. Before I came along, Whitney was the center of Ben's world. Their dad was in and out, drank, left for good when Ben was 12, And Whitney, 4 years older, more or less raised her little brother. She was his person. She decided things for him, worried over him, was needed by him completely. And then her little brother grew up and met me and married me. And for the first time in her life, Whitney was not the most important woman in Ben's life. She never said that out loud. I'm not sure she could even let herself think it. But everything she did for 13 years was built on one belief she couldn't bear to look at directly, that there was only room in Ben for one of us, that every inch I had, she'd lost. And a person who believes that, deep down, will work very hard, very quietly, to make sure you never get all the way in. It started so small, I felt crazy for noticing. We'd be at Sunday dinner, and I'd mentioned Ben and I were thinking about a trip, and Whitney would get this concerned little crease and say, "Oh, that's good. He works so hard. I just worry he doesn't get to see enough of us anymore." Light, loving. And somehow, by the end of it, the table had absorbed the idea that I was keeping Ben from his family. I hadn't said a word about anyone seeing less of anyone. She'd built it out of air, out of a worried crease and a soft voice, and set it down gently in everyone's mind, and walked away looking like the devoted sister. Then it grew, the way the starter grows. The compliments with a hook in them. "Oh, Maggie's so driven, isn't she?" with the bakery, said warmly to Donna while I sat right there. Driven, as if my work, the thing I'd built, was a slightly cold quality, a little selfish, the opposite of the warm woman who'd put her family first. She had a genius for taking a good thing about me and giving it a temperature. Driven instead of hardworking, particular instead of careful, quiet instead of kind. By the time she was done, the same facts that made me a person to admire had been replated as evidence I was a little hard, a little much, not quite one of them. The method never changed, and it was the method that made it impossible to fight. Whitney never attacked me in the open, where Ben or anyone could have seen it and taken my side. She worked one-on-one, in the kitchen, while everyone else watched the game, in the car, on the phone with her mother, in 100 private little moments, each one deniable, each one nothing by itself. To Donna, she'd worry that Ben seemed stressed. To the cousins, she'd confide that she just wished Maggie would loosen up. To Ben himself, she'd say, gentle, that she felt like she'd lost her brother a little, that she missed how close they used to be, and let him fill in the blank about whose fault that was. She never handed anyone a conclusion. She handed them a feeling and let them build the conclusion themselves, so it felt like their own idea, which is the only kind of idea a person really defends. And it worked. God, it worked. Over the years, I watched the whole family's temperature toward me drop 1 degree at a time, so slowly that I could never point to the moment it happened. I'd walk into a Sunday dinner and feel the small chill, the way the conversation closed up a half inch when I joined it. Donna got careful with me, polite the way you're polite to your son's wife, and not the way you're warm to a daughter. The cousins stopped including me in the group texts, and every single time, if I ever said anything, the answer came back the same, from Ben, from everyone. That's just Whitney. She doesn't mean anything by it. You two just need to find your rhythm. You're reading into it. You're being sensitive. You're being sensitive. I heard it for 13 years. And here is what that does to a person. What it did to me. When everyone you love tells you the thing you're seeing isn't there, in kind and patient voices, you don't just lose the argument, you lose your grip on your own eyes. I started to wonder if I was the problem. Maybe I was cold. Maybe I was too driven, too particular, too much. Maybe Whitney was just warm and family-minded, and I was a closed-off only child who didn't know how to do family right. I started, without even realizing it, to try harder, to bake more, give more, laugh louder at Whitney's jokes, shrink the parts of me she'd flagged as too much. I spent years trying to knead myself into a softer shape, a shape the family would finally accept. And you cannot need your way into being loved by someone who needs you to be the problem. The harder I worked at it, the more it proved I was anxious. Wasn't I? A little desperate? A little off? There was no version of me that could win, because winning was never on the table. My staying out in the cold was the whole point. Whitney needed one of us to be the one who didn't quite belong, and she had decided a long time ago that it was going to be me. There was one Thanksgiving that showed me the whole machine working, though I didn't have the words for it yet. I'd offered months ahead to bring the pies, my pies, the thing I'm actually good at, and Whitney had said how wonderful. Then 2 days before, she called Donna, all flustered and generous, and offered to just handle the whole dessert table herself so poor Maggie wouldn't have to work on a holiday. She's so busy with that shop. So I showed up with 4 pies I'd been up since 4 making, and there was already a full dessert table, store-bought. And Whitney met me at the door with the warmest, most wounded face and said, "Oh no, did I get my wires crossed? I thought I told you I had it." In front of everyone. And I stood there holding my pies looking like the woman who couldn't even keep the dessert plan straight, who doubled up and made a fuss, while Whitney looked like the saint who tried to give me the day off. I put my pies in the kitchen and nobody touched them. And I drove home that night and cried in the garage so Ben wouldn't hear. That is what she did, over and over, for 13 years. She never broke a single thing you could see. She just kept rearranging the furniture so that I was always the one standing in the wrong place when the lights came up. The worst of it reached the bakery, the one thing that was entirely mine. Whitney started telling people, in that worried way, that she hoped Ben didn't feel like second place to a business. That Maggie was always at the shop, that it was a shame, really, how the bakery had become the most important thing. She took the proudest accomplishment of my life and turned it into a quiet indictment of me as a wife. And the cruelest part, the part that nearly finished me, was that it started to seep into Ben. Not all at once, but he'd come home from a Sunday at his mother's a little distant, and once, after a bad one, he said, real quiet, that he just wished I'd make more of an effort with Whitney, that it would mean a lot to him, that she'd told him she felt like I'd never really tried. I'd never really tried. I had tried for 13 years until my hands were raw, and the woman who'd spent 13 years holding the door shut had convinced my own husband that I'd never knocked. That was the night I stopped, somewhere down deep. Not with a plan. I lay awake next to Ben and I finally let myself think the thought I'd been forbidding myself for over a decade. I am not imagining this. I have never been imagining this. There is a person in this family running a long, quiet campaign to make sure I am never let in. And she is winning. And she will keep winning as long as I keep trying to be soft enough to disprove her. And the trying is the thing she feeds on. The more I need, the more I look like dough that won't come together. I had to stop needing. But I want to be honest, because the people who tell you these stories always skip the part where you almost don't. I didn't march anywhere. I just got quiet. I stopped chasing Whitney's approval, stopped bringing the extra special dessert to earn a warmth that was never coming, stopped explaining myself to Donna. And for a while, that was all. I figured I'd just hold my own little life, my marriage and my bakery, and let the family think what it thought, and that would have to be enough. I genuinely believed the story was going to end there, with me quietly out in the cold for good, having decided to stop minding so much. It was a lonelier thing than I expected, that in-between, because stopping the chase didn't clear my name. It just meant I stopped exhausting myself defending it. The family still thought I was the cold one, the difficult one. Only now I'd quit performing warmth to prove otherwise, which to them just confirmed it. I'd sit at Sunday dinner and feel the old chill and not fight it anymore, and a part of me grieved that, because I had wanted that family so much, had wanted to be folded in, and I was finally admitting to myself that I never would be, not as long as Whitney needed me to be the one left out. I made my peace with being misunderstood. I told myself peace was the same as freedom. It isn't, quite. But I didn't know that yet, because I thought the only two choices were to keep fighting a fight I couldn't win, or to lie down quiet under a name that wasn't mine. It hadn't occurred to me yet that there was a third thing, that one day the lie might come for somebody else, right in front of me, and I might finally have a witness. And then Luke got engaged. Luke is Ben's little brother, the baby of the family. And that fall, he brought home a girl named Maya, and they got engaged by Christmas. And I watched the whole thing with a kind of dread I couldn't explain at first. Maya was lovely, bright, open, a little nervous to be liked, the way you are when you're new and you want a big, warm family to fold you in. She reminded me of me at 22 so much it hurt to look at her. They asked me to make the wedding cake. Of course they did. I'm the baker in the family. And here is where I almost made the worst mistake of all. The quiet one. Because my first instinct was to keep my head down, do the cake, be pleasant, stay out of it. It's not my place, I told myself. I'm the difficult one, remember. If I so much as warned that girl about anything, I'd just be the bitter sister-in-law poisoning the well, and Whitney would have a field day with it, and I'd prove every single thing she'd ever said. The safest thing, the thing that protected me, was to say nothing and let Maya find out on her own, the way I had. I had actually decided to do exactly that. Stay quiet, protect myself. And then I watched it start. It was at Donna's, a few weeks after the engagement, and Maya was glowing and talking about a honeymoon she and Luke were dreaming up. And across the room, I saw Whitney get that concerned little crease, the exact one, 13 years older now, but the same. And I heard her say, soft and warm, "Oh, that sounds wonderful. I just hope Luke gets to slow down. He's been so swept up, we've barely seen him." And I watched Maya's face. I watched it do the thing my own face used to do. The little flinch, the bright recovery, the quiet filing away that she'd somehow done something wrong, that wanting her own life with her husband was selfish, that she'd have to try harder to be let in. I watched a brand new starter get its first feeding, right in front of me, and I knew exactly what loaf it was going to become in 13 years if nobody stopped it. And I could not stay quiet. Not because I'm brave, because I knew in my body what that girl was in for, and I could not stand in a warm kitchen and watch it happen to one more person just to keep myself safe. So I baked the cake, and I made the tasting count. When it came time for Luke and Maya to come in and taste the cakes, I had them to the bakery on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. And I asked the whole core of the family to come, because that's how we do it. Everybody weighs in. Donna came, and Ben, and Luke and Maya, and Whitney. I had the little squares laid out, the lemon and the almond and the brown butter, and we were tasting and laughing. And it was nice. It was actually nice. And I watched Whitney watch Maya get more comfortable, get warmer with everyone, start to belong. And I saw the crease come. Whitney set down her fork and she said, "Light as anything," to Maya. "But for the room? Oh, you have to be careful with Luke. He gets overwhelmed. He's sensitive. He needs his family around him. Maybe don't whisk him too far away on these big trips. We'd hate to lose him." And she smiled, and it was perfect. And it was the move, the exact move, the worried warmth that turns a young woman's joy into a thing she has to apologize for. The old me would have stared at my cake squares and said nothing. Instead, I set down my own fork and I said, calm as I bake, because I have spent my whole life learning to keep my hands steady when the heat's on. "Whitney, you did that to me too." The kitchen went quiet. Maya looked up. "I said you've been doing it for 13 years. Every time I wanted a life with Ben, you got worried, out loud, that I was taking him from his family. You never said it straight, you'd just get concerned, warmly, where everyone could hear, until the whole room decided I was the cold one keeping Ben away. And it worked, because you're charming and patient, and you only ever do it one person at a time, in private, where it can't be caught. And I have spent 13 years being the difficult one in this family because of it. I let it happen. I tried to bake my way out of it, but I am not going to sit in my own shop and watch you start the exact same thing on this girl on the day she's tasting her wedding cake. Nobody breathed. And then Maya, quiet, almost to herself, said, "She told me last week that everyone thinks I'm moving too fast, that Luke's family is worried about me." She looked at me and then at Whitney, and you could see the math happening behind her eyes. Two stories that didn't fit in the same room. Whitney had told her one thing in private and was telling the table another. And now both versions were standing in the light at the same time, and they could not both be true. I watched it travel around the room. Luke looked at his sister like he was seeing a photograph slowly come into focus. All those years of family friction suddenly arranging themselves into a shape with a single hand behind it. And Donna, who had spent 13 years taking Whitney's worries as gospel, went very still. And I saw her glance from Maya to me and back, doing her own quiet arithmetic, remembering, maybe, every time she'd been handed a soft concern about me and passed it along as her own. Nobody had to be told what they were looking at. That's the thing about a move that only works in the dark. The second two people who've had it done to them are standing in the same light. It doesn't need explaining. Everybody in that bakery understood, all at once and without a word from me, that they had just watched the same trick run twice, and that meant it was a trick. Whitney did the thing she always did when a private move got dragged into the open. She reached for the warm voice. She laughed a little and said something about how everyone was being so dramatic, that she'd only ever wanted what was best for everyone, that she couldn't believe I'd ambush her like this in front of the family. And here is the thing. For 13 years, that voice had always worked. It had always smoothed everything over and turned me back into the unstable one. But this time, the room had just watched her do it twice to two different women with their own eyes, and the warm voice didn't catch. It just hung there in the air over the cake squares, sounding, for the first time, like exactly what it was. I looked at Ben, and I watched my husband, who had spent 13 years telling me I was reading into it, sit very still and finally read it correctly. He didn't say anything dramatic. He just reached over and took my hand, there in front of his mother and his sister, and he said, "Quiet. Whitney, enough. That's enough now." Two words from the brother she'd built her whole life around, and you could see them land on her like a door closing. I want to tell you, Whitney broke down and apologized, and we all hugged. She didn't. She gathered her purse and said something wounded about being attacked by her own family and left, keeping her chin up the whole way to her car. She doesn't fall apart in the open. She never has. But here is what she lost that afternoon, and the loss is the whole point, so I'm going to say it plainly. Whitney's only power, the single thing she'd run on her entire life, was being believed, being the warm, reliable one whose worried little observations everyone trusted on sight. That power lived entirely in the dark, in the private, one-on-one, in nobody ever comparing notes. And in one quiet Tuesday in my bakery, two of us compared notes in front of the whole family, and the dark place she did her work got a light turned on in it, and it never fully went dark again. After that day, people checked. When Whitney got concerned about someone, you could see Donna pause now, just slightly, and wonder. When she shared a soft worry, it didn't travel the way it used to. It hit the air and sat there. She didn't lose her family, but she lost the thing she'd traded her whole life for, which was the unquestioned right to decide who everyone was. She still comes to Sunday dinner. She just doesn't run the table anymore, because the table finally knows what her warm voice is capable of. For a woman who only ever wanted to be the one everyone believed, being quietly fact-checked at every gathering for the rest of her life is its own kind of sentence. And she handed it to herself, one spoonful at a time. I saw it land on her, once, a few months later, and that was enough for me. We were all at Donna's, and Whitney tried it again. Small, out of habit maybe, a worried little aside about how she hoped Maya wasn't pushing Luke into buying a house too soon. The old version of that sentence would have rippled out across the room and settled into everyone as concern. Instead, it just stopped. Donna said, mildly, without even looking up from the potatoes, "Oh, I think they know what they can afford. Whitney," and went right on serving. And I watched my sister-in-law sit there in the little silence after, holding a worry that hadn't traveled anywhere, hadn't moved a single person, and I watched her understand, in real time, that the things she'd been able to do her whole life, she couldn't do anymore. She wasn't being punished. Nobody was cruel to her. She'd just been turned, quietly and permanently, into a woman whose worries you weighed before you carried. That's a heavier thing to live under than anybody yelling at her ever could have been. And not one of us had to lift a hand to do it. We just stopped handing her our eyes. It didn't all knit up clean, because family never does. A couple of weeks later, Ben slipped, the old reflex. He came to me and said maybe I could reach out to Whitney, smooth it over, for his mother's sake. The holidays were coming. And I felt the old pull, the one that says, the good woman patches things up so everyone can be comfortable. But I just said, I'll be perfectly kind to your sister at every dinner for the rest of our lives. I'm not going to apologize for finally saying the true thing out loud. And I'm not going to go back to being the family's problem so she can go back to being its hero. And Ben looked at me and rubbed his face and said, "No, you're right. I'm sorry." 13 years I should have seen it, and I didn't. And he hasn't asked me to smooth anything over since. That's the most you can hope for from a person, that when they reach for the old broken habit, they catch their own hand. Donna surprised me the most. For 13 years, she'd held me at arm's length, that careful politeness, and I'd long since stopped hoping for anything warmer. But a few weeks after the tasting, she came into the bakery alone on a weekday morning, which she'd never once done, and she sat at the little corner table, and I brought her a coffee and one of the brown butter squares she'd seemed to like, and she turned it on the plate a while without eating it. And then she said, not quite looking at me, that she'd been thinking back over a lot of years, that she'd taken Whitney's worries as gospel because Whitney had carried so much when they were young, and Donna had always felt she owed her for it, that she was sorry she'd been cool to me, that she could see now I'd been trying the whole time and getting told I wasn't. It wasn't a grand apology. Her hands shook a little, but she ate the brown butter square, and she comes in now most weeks. And last month she called me her daughter-in-law to a stranger in line and then corrected herself, quiet, to just my daughter, and pretended to be very interested in the muffins, so neither of us would have to make a thing of it. 13 years I'd wanted exactly that. It turns out it was never going to come from me trying harder. It came the day the lie stopped being the only story she'd ever been told. Maya and I are close now, the way I always wanted a sister to be. She came by the bakery a few days after the tasting, and she hugged me and cried a little and said thank you. And I knew exactly what she was thanking me for, because somebody should have done it for me at 22, and nobody did. She told me that the week before, she'd already started lying awake at night wondering if she was too much, too fast, too selfish for wanting her own life with Luke, and that she'd been about to start making herself smaller without even knowing why. One Tuesday afternoon over cake squares had spared her 13 years of that. We bake together now, some Sunday mornings, before the shop opens, Just the two of us and the ovens and the quiet. And she's getting good. She's family to me in a way the people who share Ben's blood took 13 years and a turned-on light to become. Funny how that works. Sometimes the family you actually get isn't the one you married into. It's the one person who finally believed you, and the one you reached a hand back for so she wouldn't have to learn it the hard way, alone. So if you're out there tonight and there's a jar with your name on it growing in the dark on somebody's counter, fed a spoonful at a time by a person everyone loves, let me tell you the one thing 13 years and 1,000 early mornings taught me. You cannot knead yourself into the shape that pleases someone who needs you misshapen. You will only wear out your hands. The trying is the very thing they're counting on. So stop trying to be soft enough to disprove the lie. And just, once, in the light, with a witness, say the plain, true thing out loud. A lie can grow forever in the dark, but it has never once survived being set on the counter in the morning sun next to the truth, where everyone can finally see which one of you actually rose.